Good morning and welcome to a special fiction review here on Gaming with ADHD. Today, I'm going to be talking about Splashdown, the first novel in Brent Evans's Land and Sea universe and written by Blaine Lee Pardoe. Now, you might recognize these two names, especially if you're a fan of Battletech. Blaine Pardoe wrote for the Battletech setting for nearly 35 years in both sourcebooks and novels. In fact, Blaine was the author of Hour of the Wolf, the story of Clan Wolf's invasion of Terra and the beginning of the current Ill Clan era. Brent Evans is the current art director for Catalyst Game Labs and was instrumental in the start of the overhaul of the Battletech product line, including guiding the redesign of the famous battle mechs for release as new miniatures as part of the 2019 Clan Invasion of Kickstarter. Which, if you're familiar with my channel, I've looked at all of them. Needless to say, these guys are not unfamiliar with big stompy robots, which I'm kind of a big fan. So, before we get started, please do make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I try to put out a few tabletop gaming videos each week covering anything from miniatures to board games to role-playing and anything in between. I definitely plan on covering more of the Land and Sea universe as it develops and expands beyond the initial trilogy of novels, and I would love for you to come along and see what we have to offer. So, to start off with, I do want to mention that I have received an advanced copy of the book from Blaine Pardoe himself. We've interacted online a couple of times over the past year, and about a month ago he reached out to me and offered a review copy. I wasn't told anything that I had to say about the book or even required to do a review of the book, just that I could post a review anytime. There is a link below to where you can purchase the book, and at the time of this video getting published, it is still in pre-order, but will be available on January 12th, 2023, 3 days from now. Now, Splashdown is the first novel in a trilogy kicking off the Land and Sea universe. It is set in 2039, 17 years after the Russo-Bratva War in Alaska. Now, if you aren't familiar, Bratva is basically the word for the Russian mafia. I just learned that one. But I will leave it to the book to kind of explain why exactly Russia and its mafia were at war with the United States. The book starts the series by creating a world that is both familiar and new. Being only 17 years from now, there are still cars, cargo ships, airplanes, public transportation, and many familiar things we see day to day. But it still feels advanced and different from what we currently know. Reading some of the design notes from Blaine Pardoe's blog, this was clearly intentional. Scenes of a family enjoying a day at the beach, or a man out sailing his small craft, or a lance corporal arriving at her new duty station in Guam will be relatable and familiar until they're turned on their heads. For this review, I want to touch on 5 things: the character, building chapters, the aliens, the Asher rigs, and the story itself. There may be minor spoilers, but nothing that will ruin the story or how it develops. I am trying to keep it a little vague so that you can experience it like I did, but also to let you know that someone has actually read it and what they think of it. That person being me. So, first off, the characters. The book focuses on about 6 main characters split amongst military, both active and former, and civilians. Each of these characters are fantastically developed so far, and when the chapter ends, you're left wanting more. A lot of care is given to make the characters more than just archetypes. A former soldier that has moved into an abandoned church and started dealing drugs, but still lives by his own code of morals. A tech billionaire who seems to know more than is even stated in the book and willing to do anything to leverage that knowledge. An army sergeant who is part of the old way of the military. A reporter willing to do anything and everything to come out on top. A lance corporal who is wanting to prove herself, but also being tested. A teenage girl who still isn't as defined in the story, but nevertheless she's kind of important, and a captain in the Defense Intelligence Agency who is starting to put these pieces together. Now, one of the things I liked most about the book are what I'm calling building chapters. It's not an official term or anything specified in the book, but periodically chapters are inserted which are essentially short stories that highlight different areas around the world. Usually it's about 4 different stories, and they serve to highlight different areas, drop clues about the plot line, or ramp up the tension. This last one is the most interesting to me. In the very first building chapter, and the first thing you read, you are instantly told through these stories that something is wrong, and no one knows what is coming. What I thought was interesting is that the characters of these stories, they're named, they're developed as well as you can in a short story, but then they're not seen again. At least not in Splashdown. Beyond that, as you move into the novel proper, the tension drops a bit. Seemingly the characters that are introduced are just going about their lives, but you know that there's something going on. Their lives cannot and will not be the same once the story reaches its crescendo, and the crescendo is masterfully timed. So, where does that lead us? Well, the aliens. The aliens that are invading Earth are interesting, but there is a little bit of a problem with them. In this book, you will be left wanting more. And not just in a sense of, that was great, where's the next book? But more because of unanswered questions. Splashdown is book 1 in a trilogy, and there are many things that are left for future books. I'm not worried about it as much because, per the author, all 3 books in the trilogy are written and will be released soon after each other. But there are some basics that would have been helpful. Like a name. We are never given the official name of the aliens, or even a nickname assigned by military intelligence. Unfortunately, the only thing we are given is descriptions of the aliens that appear in the book, but nothing else official to call them. I admit it's sort of a nitpick, but it still frustrates me a little bit. And beyond that, as far as the aliens are concerned, they are designed and developed well. They are interesting, they are unique, but they are also familiar. Blaine writes them in such a way that they almost feel like they could have been part of our world, even though we know they're not. So the aliens, while I have some frustrations there, are done fantastically. Now, the Asher rigs. Let's be honest. Blaine Pardoe is known for Battletech. Brent Evans is known for Battletech. He was even the line developer for a while. So, we were promised big stompy robots when Land and Sea was announced. We weren't necessarily told what the name of them was. I don't remember exactly when they announced that they were called Asher rigs, but we were told that this world would have big stompy robots, of which these guys are famous for. Now, they are well delivered, but also another disappointment. They make an appearance in the book. We're told about, I want to say about a dozen different types of Asher rigs. At least we're told about it on Blaine's blog. But in the book, we see very little of them. We're shown 4 different Asher rigs and basically like 2 or 3 appearances of them in the book itself, of which at least 2 of them are training exercises. Now, the training exercises are interesting because when they appear, there are explanations given, descriptions of tactics that could be used against them, even a little bit about how they operate. But that's about it. But I do think that the missing Asher scenes can be forgiven. Brent and Blaine are trying to start something new here. They aren't just throwing a book out into the wind and hoping that people will read it. They have plans for books, games, media, and almost anything else you could possibly see it in. They are trying to build a world that is at once familiar, but also new and fresh. And while I have frustrations with the aliens and the Asher, the fact that the trilogy is done does calm some of those concerns, knowing the books are coming. Alright, but what about the story itself? I loved it. My channel is called Gaming with ADHD for a reason. And unfortunately, one of the side effects has been that it has been a long time since I have been able to tear through a book. I've read The Wheel of Time. Literally. I used to burn through 500 to 1,000 page books with no problem. But as my own attention span has shortened, so has my ability to just sit and read a book. But that wasn't the case with Splashdown. From the time I got the file, I was being pulled along from one chapter to the next. I would even send Blaine periodic updates as to where I was in the book, partly because I wanted him to know that I was reading it and not just ignoring the opportunity, but also because it was that good. In fact, 4 days after reading him, I sent him this, quote, "Keywords so far from me, fear, tension, anticipation. Mostly fear. I realize I have half of the book left, but I keep waiting for people to die." Unquote. What is important to me about that statement is that I don't go for fear or tension in my books or movies. I don't mind action. I don't mind something a little bit suspenseful because, just revealing everything is never that fun. But this was done so well that I needed to know what happened next. But in this case, fear and tension don't mean blood and gore. There is some, but it's not excessive or inappropriate. I did watch another review of the book that mentioned while Mr. Pardoe's Battletech novels are more, say, PG-13, this book seemed to have had the gloves taken off and Blaine given a bit more of a free rein. And I do disagree with that to a point. I think the fact that he's writing in a universe that he's helping to create, he has the freedom that doesn't come with almost 40 years of real world history. And even then, I can't think of a reason that I wouldn't give this book to anyone in their early teenage years. So, in conclusion, I was really entertained by this book. I've read works by Blaine Pardoe before, but I'll be honest, they didn't stick out as much as this one did. I'm not saying they weren't good or that anything, prior to this was bad. I mean, let's be honest. He's been a successful writer for nearly 40 years. But in the past, there are writers that have worked for IPs, other Battletech authors even, that when they went out on their own, they didn't pull me along. I wasn't as interested in their own properties. That isn't the case with Splashdown. I enjoy stories. And lately, me personally, I've been lazy about reading and writing. But Splashdown made me want to read and to get to the end of the story. As a point of comparison, Blaine's last Battletech novel, Hour of the Wolf, was a slog for me to get through. I did it, but it didn't have the excitement. It didn't have the character development that you're going to find in Splashdown. And yes, I say that knowing full well that Hour of the Wolf was almost non-stop, big, stompy robot action. Splashdown was a wonderful story and a delicious taste of what's to come. Now, as of this video, Splashdown is set to release on January 12th, with the next books following 1 and 2 months after. So whether you want to buy it right now or wait until the entire trilogy is released, you're not going to have to wait long. The story is absolutely worth a read, and I'm excited to see what comes next. So, I hope you enjoyed that video. I absolutely enjoyed this book. I enjoyed making this, and if you did, please do give the video a thumbs up. Again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And if there's somebody you know who likes good stories, likes good fiction, likes big stompy robots, let them know. Share this video to them, and maybe they'll pick it up as well. So, at this point, your rig is prepped and loaded. It's time to suit up. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.